morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg and it's the 26th day of June 2024. And happy birthday to two of my favorite people out there, and you know who you are. So anyhow, I hope that you're having a great day today. First off, we're going to start out with Liberty Essentials with Bill Mohr, chairman of the U.S. Taxpayers Party, the Constitution Party in the state of Michigan. I'm the first vice chair, and Karen the Riveter. And after that, we have Bruce Castor on, and he is a Pennsylvania attorney. He was on President Trump's second impeachment hearing. He was one of the President Trump lawyers that were involved in that, and he has a lawsuit that he's presenting today. It was filed in the state of Pennsylvania against the election maladministration. I'll put it out there like that, right? And really, I'm really interested to hear about this because there's a lot of legal work that's being done behind the scenes. It looks like I'm going to be another signatory on another lawsuit that's coming out. So just be prepared for some fireworks, because this girl and everybody else that's really fighting for the United States of America is not backing down from this. So with that said, good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good morning.
What's happening in Bill and Karen land?
Oh man. Besides fixing a lot of messes that people are creating work-wise, that's nothing really new, but there seems to be much more and more of it as we continue on through the week here.
Is it work-wise, like work, or like Constitution Party work?
Mainly work.
Mainly work. Okay.
Yeah. You're kind of touched into properties and leasing and renting out properties as well. So you'll understand this. When you hire contractors and they do a job, if they don't do their job properly, usually you call them back and make them fix their work, right? Or if they do it so bad, then they don't get their full pay and you hire somebody else to come in and do the work, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so I have a client that does this often. He thinks that cheap labor is a very good thing. And I tell all my customers, you can get two of three things, but you can never get three. And that is, when you hire somebody to do a job, you can get it done fast, you can get it done cheap, or you can get it done good. You can pick any two of those three things, but you cannot have all three, right? You can get fast and good, but it ain't going to be cheap. Or you can get cheap and good, but it isn't going to be fast, right? Mm-hmm. So they believe that they can find all three of these things in somebody else. And what tends to happen with the last several large projects that we've been doing is somebody comes in and starts working and just messes a lot of stuff up, right? For lack of
the cheapest bid on every job is going to screw you. I'm going to tell you that right now, because they tell me when they do that and they come in cheap that they're hungry looking for work because they either don't have work or they screwed up somewhere.
Yeah, and that the last job we just finished, in all honesty, and I'm not exaggerating this at all, we were finishing up just touch-up work when we leave, put outlet covers on, clean some things up. A couple of doors were loose, that kind of thing. It was a long list of little stuff. However, on our work was also to touch up areas of paint, right? The house had just been painted, to touch up areas of paint that was just clearly missed by the painters. So we went in there and started examining the work to figure out what we're going to need to do it, as the painters were loading the paint out of the house back into their vehicle. Right? So we're doing the work of the people who didn't do their work while they were still there. That's my rant for the day.
Well, I tell you what,
become more prevalent
this week, since Carla Wagner from Axe My Tax decided to start a little bit of a war with Donna Brandenburg. And she called me billionaire Donna Brandenburg with billions and billions of dollars who should be putting it into Axe My Tax. I thought this was a grassroots thing that wasn't based on money. But all of a sudden, now we're going to say we're going to continue the lie that started with Gateway Pundit. That was one of the one of the things that did irreparable damage to me. I'm not a billionaire. I wish I was, but I wasn't. I actually work. So this week we couldn't get enough people that were cleaning last week. So last week in the 90-degree weather, I was literally sweat from head to toe because I was painting and cleaning. So one of the places has really tall ceilings, and I walked in there and it was just filthy. In fact, I was washing walls in there, and I'm pretty fast. I used to do all my own work, so I know how to cut the time out of jobs. And honestly, the O-Cedar mop, if you have an O-Cedar mop, one of my favorite tools, you can clean walls with that thing so fast it's not even funny. So I looked at the walls and I thought, I'm gonna have to repaint. Somebody's gonna have to repaint this entire thing because it was grungy. I mean, furry walls kind of thing, right? I thought, well, I'm gonna get the old cedar mop out, and I find that there's certain cleaners that are really good, and I'm not endorsing. I don't get paid for this. Okay, this is just what I use. There's no money that's involved here. I don't have anybody that's paying me to say this or do this or anything like this. This is all my duty to the United States of America, is just to be a good citizen, right? And so anyhow, I get my Lest oil out because that cuts through just about anything in walls or anything. My old cedar mop, get that thing all up, and I'm washing walls like a beast level going through there, and halfway through the first room, the bucket of water looked like mud. That's how dirty it was. That wasn't even the floor. And it was just the walls. And so I'm like, literally, I worked in that apartment for so long. It's really big. It's the size of a house, actually, because it's in an historic area. And I'm going to tell you what, it was filthy in there. And Donna Brandenburg, not the billionaire, was scrubbing walls, toilets, and floors, because when things don't get done and you own businesses, guess what? Tag, you're it. You're gonna end up doing it. But anyhow, we just got some new cleaners, and so hopefully I won't be doing the majority of painting and cleaning at this point in time. But when you have as many units as I do, it's a little slow if you're a one-man show getting that kind of stuff done, even though I'm fast. But yeah.
The point is that when we have a job to do, and I'm not talking just about work, but when we have a job to do, whether it be in work or politics, or if we're called by God to do something, you have to do it.
And you don't
you
quit.
Can't be lazy about it.
And you don't quit and bitch and complain and find all kinds of excuses to feel sorry for yourself. You jump in and get the job done, right?
Right. Yep. I'm glad you actually just brought up the axe my tax thing, because
let's go through
this kind of falls right into it.
Yeah. So because I'm gonna go in there because this is like, oh, we need to cut property taxes. Bing, 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 bing. Headline alert. This is what happened with the last amendments that got passed unconstitutionally. Is that besides that, I don't believe they had enough signatures to get it on the ballot, because the powers that be that wanted to take this nation down enlisted the village idiots to join in on this thing and jump on the headline. And it's like, I have so many questions about this, and of course we never get our questions answered because we just gaslight and deflect.
So Carla Wagner actually came to our meeting. I'm sure you remember that back early last year, because she wanted to speak on this matter. And I've talked with her for, I don't know, a couple hours on the phone, probably one-on-one. And we are the Constitution Party. Okay, I like to reiterate that if it cannot be found constitutionally or in its proper law, then it cannot be. All right. I don't care how good something sounds. I don't care if it's a step towards the right direction. If there remains something in there that is unlawful or unconstitutional, then I cannot support it.
Right. It goes.
Right. So as much as what they're doing in eliminating property taxes, that headline alone is great. It's good. It's perfect. It needs to be done. Right.
Yeah.
However, I don't know how many people have actually read the Axe My Tax petition. I happen to have one sitting here on my desk, right?
And Bill, the other thing is that when they came to show us this, we looked it up and they didn't even have the language approved, and they still don't have it approved. And oh, by the way, hang on, I've got a couple of things that aren't going to age well for for Axe My Tax. We're just going to bring this up a minute because I think, and I'm willing to talk with her. I'd love to have her come in here and I'll interview her and we'll have our questions answered because there's some serious questions. Okay. So this was posted April 26th. I believe Carla Wagner has about 6 short videos on axemytax.org on the road under featured. If you've not heard about it at this moment, please get educated now as petitions need to be turned into Lansing by June 15th. Spread the word and sign the petition. What date are we at now? And I don't know if we got an extension or what we have, but I have some concerns. And her answer was, yes, we are continuing to circulate. Yes, thanks. She never answered the question. The question was, did they need to be turned in on the 15th? That would complicate things, wouldn't it? Why are they gathering petitions and wasting people's time some more on something that doesn't have the language approved? Because I don't think it has. And it keeps circulating this. What is actually going on here? And now let's talk about this half-baked plan.
Yeah, so basically, like I said, I'm all for eliminating property taxes. They are unlawful in their entirety, right?
Yep.
Any direct tax on the people is a direct threat to their life, liberty, or property. Every tax should be a volunteer tax, as like the sales tax. Okay, sales tax is a great way to fund the state government. Because if I don't want to fund the state government, I don't have to buy anything.
Consumption tax is a great way to go.
Yep, it is not a direct tax. It is not a use tax, right? How many use taxes do we have out there that say that if you're going to own this piece of property, I don't care if it's property tax, registration, insurance is actually a part of that.
Licensure of any type, permitting or licensure or anything like that.
Yep. So anything that involves those type of taxes is unlawful, and I can't support it. I was actually just what's the word I'm looking for? Somebody from Axe My Tax came up to me at the last meeting I was at back in June, beginning of June. We did a large meeting, probably, I don't know, 100 people or so showed up. Who was
it? I want to know who it was.
I don't know who it was.
Guy or girl?
It was a guy. He was short, probably 5'10". I say short. He's about 5'10", right? He's a little shorter than I am. A little older, probably late 40s. I don't no idea who it was. But anyway, he came up and asked if I'd signed the petition, and I told him no, I haven't, and that I won't be. And he was really confused because he kind of knew who I was. And so I had the opportunity to talk to him for probably about 15 minutes, explaining why I have not put my name on that petition. And that is because of the direct taxes that it leaves in the Constitution.
Right.
And he was really confused about that. But by the time I was done speaking with him, he understood that point and he agreed with it, but he kept on going to circulate. Okay. I understand that his job is to circulate this petition. However, the guy just agreed with me that what he was circulating is unlawful, but still pushing it on the people, because we can push something unlawful as long as we're getting rid of something that's unlawful, right? But if anybody can make that make sense, I'd appreciate that, right? It's like baby steps, but we're going to leave some corruption in there as we continue. It doesn't work, right? If you're going to go for it, go all in, go all out, and make the biggest push you can, right?
It centralizes taxes to the state is what it does from what I see. And it takes it away from local. So that's great. Now we've got to go to the state to have them distribute the money. It's the same stupid thing that they did with a state police, where all of the tax money goes through a unionized police force that can't be removed, where it should be going directly. If you're going to do anything, it should have gone first to the sheriff's department. But now the sheriffs have to go begging the state police for money.
One of the big things in the petition was the raising of the percentage of votes it takes to approve local taxes. And I kind of chuckled when I read that, because it raised it from a majority, 51%, to 60%. I'm against 51% of the people in my area telling me that I have to pay a tax to live here, right? I'm against that in its entirety. But I'm also against 60% of the people in my local area telling me I have to pay a tax to live here. Okay, I don't care about the percentage. You do not have a right as an individual to impose a tax on your fellow individual or tell them to get out.
Yep.
That's what it boils down to. It really does. They have no authority to do such things. And if you look at it in a premise, there's another thing that came up throughout the last week, and I mean they're a far cry from each other, but they have some similarities, and that is I don't know if you've heard about the potential threat of a draft, right? Several people in higher levels are proposing that we need to bring back the draft because obviously they've kicked most of our military out because they wouldn't get the jabs. Right?
Yeah, and they're trying to recruit illegal aliens.
That's right. So they want to try to impose this draft on the people, completely unconstitutional, by the way, as was every draft in its history. The reason being is that a standing army is controlled by the government. It is an arm of force, and that is the reason why the founding fathers limited it to 2 years during a war that is declared by Congress. Okay, we haven't had a war declared by Congress since I don't know when now, but they keep upping this National Defense Act every 2 years to keep a standing army among the people. It's completely unconstitutional. Okay, so when they impose this draft, you're already trying to forcibly take somebody and put them in a position that they don't necessarily want to be in, and that position is currently unconstitutional in the way it stands. Right? But a lot of people are saying this is a good thing. We need to fund our military. They don't understand that the entire military force of the United States and its creation was the militia of the states. Mm-hmm. Right? The federal government was only supposed to take the states' militias in certain cases where they had to go to war and they needed the entire union to do it. Otherwise, the militias were there to defend the states, to keep the states free and secure, right? But those were not a forced position either. Everything regarding the militia was volunteer-based. It was a duty of the people, volunteer-based for anyone between 18 to 65, that varies between the states, that was capable of carrying arms. Right? It wasn't a forced thing on the people because there were some religious sects at the time that did not see the bearing of arms as falling under a duty of their religion. In fact, a lot of them, not a lot of them, but there were a few that refused to take up arms because of their religious practices, because of their beliefs. Okay, and that was exempted early on in the Second Amendment. If anybody knows that was one of the original proposals done before we have what we have now. So all that to be said, the similarity is we as Americans are not forced to do something. If we're doing something, whether it be taxes or defense, that should all be volunteer. We should love our country, love our fellow man enough to put ourselves in that position, or to volunteer our time or volunteer our money through donation to make something happen for the benefit of each and every individual here in America. Mm-hmm. Right? Not be forced by 60% of our fellow man to do something or else.
Yeah, because if you don't do that, then guess what? They're going to come after you legally, and or you're going to lose your house anyway. They can do it through HOAs now. This is one of the huge problems that I have is homeowner associations are unconstitutional and should be absolutely abolished. All of them.
Now, an HOA in law should be abolished completely. The state has no business in setting up or regulating HOAs. If you have a community, closed gated community like some people do, I don't understand it, and you guys all want to agree and compact and write a contract amongst yourself to have an HOA, go for it, right? If you want to commit yourself to such a thing, yes, but you cannot force it on somebody else, and the state should have no business in private contracts.
Well, and you can't force everyone to join it either. I mean, if you want to get together, my whole thing on this that I don't understand, because I was talking to somebody about, with having rental property and going through the city and having to have it registered and inspected and all that sort of thing, right? When I first got into this, we would have inspectors that would come through our properties and kick out outlets and do all sorts of things to create damage so they could write you up. And that happened. And now we've got a much more amicable relationship, because they got their heads out of their behinds and stopped being like the little Nazis they were. They're not anymore. I like the people, and I would opt in to having inspections done, because I think it's a real smart thing to have a third party that's in there that can validate that you've done your job and what you've done, right? But my point on this whole thing is everything is so backwards in the way that it's run. It's incredible. Why is it that people want to go just like the Nazis and call the state, call the city, call everybody like a bunch of little kids? They did this, they did that. I don't like this. Instead of looking at your neighbor and seeing something that maybe they're struggling on and getting a bunch of people and saying, hey, do you need help? Do you need help? Maybe there's somebody older that needs a roof put on or something like that. Instead of paying taxes, wouldn't it be better to be able to, if you want to help people, to decide where you want to put your money and that sort of thing, and get friends together and do it? I think it would be a much better plan, quite honestly. And I don't understand why everything is based on a punitive basis. Everything is punitive. If you don't do what we tell you to do, you're going to get punished. If they took all the money that they lost in the city of Grand Rapids, I pulled some big data a while back, and all of the people that are avoiding taxes, that are landlords and people that have income property, I was finding millions and millions of dollars that they weren't paying. And all they would do is they'd sell it for $1 to somebody else, and those taxes just went away, and it would go to a lien or go to something to the county. City would never see it. If they collected actual taxes from the businesses the way that it should be done, and they kept it in the community, they'd have all kinds of money to be able to help citizens in what they're doing. And then you make the penalty so tough that if they fail, they never get back up off their feet again.
Yeah, and that's the point, is that the sales tax, the business tax and such, through the income, right, through the selling of produce or product, that is not a direct tax on the people, right? The power to tax is the power to destroy, right? So that's not a direct tax. The people can remove themselves from it. And that's the point. That's the reason why the federal government was designed to set up on tariffs and such. You want to import something into here, then we're going to tax that. But as far as products that were made within individual states and sold within the states, federal government can't touch that, right? They have no business in that manner. Yet we see them getting involved every step of the way. So that's what has to be looked at when we start talking about taxes and such. That's the premise behind every tax that should be claimed unlawful. Is it direct on the people? Is it found within a power listed within our Constitution, right? And even if it is it lawful in that manner? There are some things in our Constitution, especially in the state of Michigan, that are unlawful. Call it constitutional if you will. It is unlawful first and foremost. It's a direct violation against either human life, liberty, or property.
1963
if it is, it doesn't belong there.
Should be nullified because it was installed incorrectly.
Yep. So, yeah, and one other thing about the Axe My Tax that I have to mention is I spent probably 6 months trying to get somebody to give me the language, right? I don't know how many people had it before me, and I don't really know when it came out, but after about 6 months of telling people, hey, I'm waiting for this language, I don't know where it is, before I do anything with it, I want to know what it says, and nobody could provide that. And then finally somebody came over and said, oh yeah, somebody dropped a petition off at my house and I have a copy of it. And so they handed it to me. And it's been on my desk ever since. So, all that being said,
would you like to read it so everybody knows what the language is, and then you can point by point?
It's long. We got 3 pages, and there's probably Yeah, there's 3 or 4 edits to the Constitution. So, actually, I will. Do you have a copy of it, Donna?
Not on my desk right now.
Let me. I can scan this a minute.
You know what you can do? If you can screenshot it with your phone and text it to me, I'll put it up online.
I can probably do that as well. Because the first page is really the only thing that that matters. The second is just the listing of the rest of the constitutional acts that involve it.
Well, and this is what people don't realize. When I was at Turning Point, I had this gal come up to me and she's like, are you against term, or, are you for term limits? And I'm like, well, I'm absolutely against anything that makes turns a position in the government into a lifelong career. I'm absolutely against all of that. And she's like, well, everybody's signing this petition that they will support term limits, blah, blah, blah. And so I read this thing that she's having me sign. And at the bottom, it was a Convention of States thing, and, Constitutional Convention. And I'm like, I really like the term limit part of it, but there's not a chance that I'm going to sign something that has a Convention of States in it. And that's also an organization that is funded by George Soros. People look into things. You have to look into what's behind this stuff, because they'll get you every single time with these headlines that sound good until you really dissect what you're signing. And it's like a contract. Yeah, I want to buy a house, for example. Oh yeah, I want to buy a house. Sign the contract. Boom, you're done. Did you read the contract?
So how many people know that we have congressional term limits here in Michigan? Does anybody know this? It is listed in our state constitution. It was put there for that specific reason. The people wanted it. The people got it. And then what happened shortly after that? The Supreme Court gets involved because somebody filed a federal case, right? An unjust federal case, because the Supreme Court shouldn't be ruling in that manner regarding a state's constitution. That is our own issue, not theirs. But we put in term limits in our state constitution to say that we cannot put somebody on the ballot after they've served their 2 terms. And it was the federal government that said, nope, you have violated the federal constitution, even though there's nothing listed in there that says a state cannot do that, or that it's the federal government's job to put up candidates, right? Because it's not, and it is ours. So therefore, the states have the authority to limit such practices. So we allowed the Supreme Court to step in and violate the state of Michigan's right to term limits, is what happened there.
The Supreme Court got it wrong.
Can you imagine
the Supreme Court is a fallible entity?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I agree with Weird Al Yankovic when he says, if the Supreme Court's so supreme, where is our guacamole and sour cream? That's about how far we've gotten at the federal level.
Is that petition 3 pages or 4 pages, Bill?
It's 3. The first page is the only one I took a snapshot of, because I don't think there are any edits on page 2 or 3. They're just required to list the entire section.
I'm going to mute so you guys don't have to hear my really excited chicken who just laid an egg, apparently.
I was wondering about that. I was going to ask you if you had a duck, because it sounded like a duck from my speakers.
Okay. So this is the kind of investigation that people should be doing on all things before you just jump on them, because that's one of the ways that they take people hostage in all sales transactions, in all contracts. It's like we had something here where somebody came in and was putting in fiber in our area. Read the contract. I had somebody who's a contract person read the contract. They basically claimed all rights of everything that you transmitted. And all of a sudden it became their possession. Who in their right freaking mind would sign up for this? I'm like, this is nuts. And but nobody reads the contracts. They just, oh yeah, it sounds great. I want this or I want that. And they don't realize you just signed your life away and everything you've ever put out there. Good luck.
That's the same thing between us and our state, right? We know that the people have put the state in power. as servants, not as a authoritative entity. The people are the kings and queens of the state, right? The state, anybody in the state, the entire Constitution is set up as a contract between us and them as our employed servants, right? Indentured servants. When you look at it in that manner, you have to understand when the servant gets out of hand, you have to chastise them. You have to bring it back around correctly to fit the contract, right? If not, you need to sever the contract and or find yourself a different servant. Understand that's why the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence wrote that we have the right to alter or abolish governments. That's the same principle. And I forget where that all started now. Oh, contracts. So the Constitution is no more than a contract or a trust between the people and the state government, right? We are the authority. We are the grantors, right? And we are the benefactors, the masters. Everybody listed in our Constitution, our de jure government, is the servant. They are the children, right? So
This is why I don't like to hear people use the terms lawmakers. The state lawmakers are working on. No, they're not. Lawmakers. Legislators, you can use that term if you want to, but lawmaker? No, we make the laws. They just represent our ideas.
yeah, and that's actually the reason I do believe that early on in Michigan's history specifically, that we actually refrain from lawmakers listed in our Constitution. We call them legislators, and they are to legislate according to law, right? The people are the law here. As long as we correctly govern ourselves, we remain under the law. We remain lawful. However, we also need to understand there is but one lawmaker, and that is God himself, the author of us, the author of this world, and the is blesser a word? Somebody who blesses. What would that be called? As the one who blesses the nation, right? So our legislators only discover what is actually in law and discover how to apply it to today's situations. One thing I was actually doing this morning before the show, Donna, is I sat here and I get updates on any new bills that have been signed into law. Okay, I suggest if you're not on that list, go to Michigan Legislature and sign up for the list. I forget what it's called, but you can get an update anytime something is signed into law. A couple days later, you'll get an update. The most recent one, the House Bill 4519. I'm going to assume most people haven't seen that because it's kind of pointless, but it has been over some of the local news. And that is the fact that the legislature, right, those who Karen just said they would call lawmakers, our legislature has just declared that May the 2nd of each year shall be known as Negro Leagues Day.
What?
Right? This is what your legislature is working for that.
Who's going to get money for that? This is all a money thing.
Yep.
That's crazy.
All the while we have problems at our own Michigan border, right, between us and Canada. We have the issue with the fraudulent elections currently still taking place. We have issues at the local levels with our clerks. We have a felonious entire administration in the state, and our lawmakers make up a bill that is supported by all but 4 people, right? There were 3 no's and 1 abstained. I believe I got that right when I looked it up. 3 no's, nays, and 1 abstained. Other than that, everybody voted yay on declaring May 2nd the Negro Leagues Day. And I'd say if you're going to declare a day anything, which I don't think they should be doing anyway, but if you're going to declare a day of anything, how about taking something from our history, right, that's actually important instead of reminding the segregation of people here. And I applaud the Negro Leagues. They did a great job. back in the early 20s when they were trying to get out in the spotlight. They were in fact publicly opposed to the whole idea of racism, though it was set up from the government, right? The division between white and black was all pushed by the government entity at the time, and the people were buying into it. But if you go back and actually look, how about something more profitable to the entire populace instead of just promoting a portion of the people? And that would be like May 2nd in 1844, right? The first time a public high school was set up in the state of Michigan out in Detroit. That was an important day, in my opinion, because it started to establish the higher level education within the public administration that the people had put up, known as the public education in the state of Michigan. We see where that went today. I'm not going to get into that, but it started out decently. I'm going to say.
Where do I sign up, or where do we sign up for the in this? I'm in the legislative legislature.mi.gov.
I did that so long ago.
Okay.
I'm not certain where the sign up is. It might actually be up in the top. No, the top right is to actually make like a sign up account.
You have an account? I can't even the Secretary of State things. I've been working on that notary thing. They will not let me sign up for an account, even though I've got my bond and I was sworn in. The state refuses to let me sign in. It's the craziest thing you've ever seen in your life. It is worthless. This is like one of the worst designed websites for functionality, because I don't think they want us to find stuff.
It's very hard to find anything that you're looking for. I keep a tab on my phone so I can at least once I find something, I keep it there.
Yeah, it's
and work from there, so I don't have to search again.
We'll post it.
Yeah, I'll have to. I'll dig around and figure out where that actual sign up is. I did that years ago, so it's changed twice. What's
it called, Bill? What's the whole thing called?
Oh, let me pull up the email here. It actually comes from the House clerk. Have to give me a minute. It's the Public Act effective dates.
Okay, hang on.
Okay, I've got a link here to manage.
If you put the link in there and you put it in the private chat, I can pull it up from there.
Yep, there it is, right there. I got it.
Got it?
Yep.
Cool.
That's how you sign up for that, and you can even sign up for their TV broadcasts and such too. So, and all the committees. I wouldn't recommend clicking every box, because then you might as well have a private email address, right? Because there is so much stuff that they do that they ought not be doing, and you're going to get noticed of everything that's going on.
Well, and considering that we have 2,000 bills a year that go through our legislature, which is a bunch of crap, I mean, they are. How do you think that? Does anybody really think they're reading these things? No, they've got some assistant there that's working for somebody, and they tell them, yeah, you need to vote this way. You don't need to vote this way, because holy crap, because who's paying the bills there? So you got to ask, if people look like they're actually working full time at something, the question is, who's paying the bills? So public acts right there, right?
Yep.
Cool. Wow, look at this.
Yeah, if you're interested in any specific topic, you should be on here and at least get notified of the committees that are dealing in your topic. You will be rather disturbed at how much goes through there that doesn't even get talked about. Right? Even the things that don't even make it to the floor, some of the bills that are even just proposed and sent to committee and then they die in committee are just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you can read them, and the normal person by common sense will know this is the stupidest thing you've ever tried to propose. But it happens all the time. And it's sad that we even have people that are proposing such measures. Anybody that does so, for instance, when right before Prop 3, right, the what do they call it, reproductive freedom for all, or
The
rather
Destroy Parental Rights Bill.
the Destroy Parental Rights Bill and Murder the Posterity Bill. That was actually put through the legislature prior to, and it was shot down several times over the last decade. So what they have to do, they had to push it where they knew they could get it through, and that was by a constitutional amendment through their fraudulent election system.
As they're rigging the elections through all of these nonprofits that we went through yesterday with Jonathan Cagle. I mean, these people are controlling all of our elections through this manner right here. All of them right here. I'm going to post all these today too. It was a long, long, long list. And so because they're into data collection, the word of the day, boys and girls, is data collection. This is where they really make money. You know, I had that figured out on Tudor Dixon because her dad was part of, you know, and I don't want to hear, oh, poor Tudor, her dad died while she was running. Well, mine did too. And I didn't sob about it all over the place because it had nothing to do with the job. We all have things that happen in our life, and it's an adult function to deal with those things. You don't drag that stuff into work. You do your work, and you don't bring that stuff into work, right? Why is that? Why would that even be brought up in a candidate running for office? I didn't understand it. Okay, but anyhow, he had a company called Falls River Group, was based out of actually Naples, Florida, I believe, and they were all about global information brokering. That's where they made their money. And when you look at them standing with the DeVosses and how she was a DeVos candidate that was put up, and then announced at RDV downtown at the Econ Club. And there's some real crazy things going on with those little alliances down there. Make no mistake. Birds of a feather.
Yep, and that's the way it always works. These people that keep putting up candidates that are promoted by DeVos. I don't know. Maybe we ought to just do a whole show on who the DeVosses are, who the Rockefellers.
Yeah, I can run through that one pretty easily, actually.
Yeah, these Michigan families. I mean, there are several large Michigan families that people keep promoting, and I don't think they have any idea who these people are. Right?
No,
it's an alliance of hell that's spoken about in the scriptures. That's who these people are. But for some reason, we keep promoting the candidates that they're funding. I mean,
and then
we have to get over this.
And they're so nice. They're so nice. They know all of the words to say.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Angels of light show up, and it's to the undiscerning mind, they're gonna sound great, right? That's how we've gotten where we're at. We listen to things that have 99% truth and 1% poison, right? I don't know if has anybody ever looked at the ingredients to rat poison? Right? Adolf Hitler said this back when they were establishing the Third Reich, is that if you tell a lie long enough, loud enough, and often enough, people will believe it. Right? That's the same principle with rat poison.
It's Coumadin.
Yeah, well, if you look at the ingredients to rat poison, it's not like 99% poison. It is 99.9% rat food. It's good for you. And 0.1%, give or take, of whatever poison they're using. It doesn't take a little bit.
I think it's Coumadin.
It probably is. Yeah, that's also a drug they use for to get rid of blood clots.
Yeah, it's a blood thinner.
Yeah, blood thinner.
Yeah. Makes them it bleeds them out, and they bleed out and they dry out, and your mouse problem is over.
Yeah. Well, let's call it what it is. It's rat poison, right?
Rat poison. And
people are injecting that as a blood thinner.
Yeah.
If you want a blood thinner, I've got many natural remedies that'll help you better than rat poison. Right?
Hey, there's one that's called asafoetida, and that's a Indian spice, like from India. And I think they call it like a stinky spice or something like that. It's a weird smelling thing. I have some in the house here, and it will lower your blood pressure according to everyone that I've heard who has used it. Now, I'm not going to say don't go and chuck your doctor stuff, go check with your doctor and local and state officials, and we'll do the disclaimer there. But everybody that I know, it says that this is it's a culturally a remedy that a lot of people in the Black community know about. There's a lot of folk medicine when you look into lots of different cultures, and they work. I'm not going to list all of them, but one of these days I'll start listing them, because it's one of my things. I love this sort of thing.
Well, we talked about that kind of stuff a little bit with the off the grid, and my suggestion was that people have a basic understanding of what's behind about the drugs, the chemicals, the pharmaceuticals that they're taking, because if one day those things aren't available, will you have enough knowledge to come up with some sort of substitute so you can survive?
Exactly. Yeah, we've gone through that a couple of times, Bill, on Fridays with Off the Grid and with Dr. Kent, and all these great things. One of the greatest things everybody should have is nicotine gum or patches, because it is rumored, I will say rumored, and in fact, I chewed one of the gums this morning, that if you're coming down with something, that Dr. Kent says is that it's one of the best ways to derail a virus.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I'll let everybody here know. I smoked cigars since I was 13, right? I'm 36, so it's 23 years, give or take. And just recently I stopped. And I won't go into details why, but somebody called me out on something, and it changed my outlook on what I was doing. So just recently I stopped. I think it's like day 17 or something. I don't know.
Best number in the world.
Yeah, something like that. But I am not against what they would call tobacco. I am not against what they call nicotine. I am against them putting extra chemicals, extra artificials within what they call cigarettes and cigars. I'm against that in its entirety. But to go back and look at how we got to this point, because a lot of native tribes understand what tobacco is in its natural form, right? In its leaf form. They understand what it is. They understand how you can use it. And they understand a lot of benefits to it. So originally, before this, the whole tobacco industry got large, right? Anything with the word industry, look at it for what it is. They were all promoted by our government, by the FDA, nonetheless, before the ATF showed up. But by the FDA, they were promoted all the way across the board, right? You can go back and look at their advertisements that were allowed, even to the point of pregnant women, right? Yep. Smoking cigarettes. You might remember this, Donna. I'm not sure how old you are, Karen. I certainly don't remember it. I only see what's left of the evidence, right?
I've seen the evidence.
Yeah. Everybody smoked like a chimney when I was a kid. You get in the car, everybody smoked as a kid. You're in the car and you're like, choking in the car as all your, as everybody around you was smoking. I mean, it was a thing to do.
But that was what was being promoted, right?
Yeah.
And so everybody just kind of jumped on it. It was good. It was fun. There was a lot of benefits to it as well.
It was cool. It was a cool thing to do.
Yep. However, what began to happen? All of a sudden, the agenda switched, and now it's become a bad thing. Now the FDA says, "Oh no, this is bad," so they have to create a department known as the ATF. Right? That was one of their duties: alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and explosives. Now, but tobacco was one of those, and they began to regulate it. So it went from being something promoted and good, possibly even useful, promoted, useful, possibly even good, to now this chemically altered, everything about it is bad for you, but we're going to regulate it and we're going to overly tax it to fund unnecessary functions of government,
such as
Ukraine. To fund themselves.
Yeah,
and that's
Ukraine.
Yeah, and that's where we've gotten to today. If you look at the industry, it was set up by the government, it was promoted by the government, it was proclaimed as evil by the government. So the government gets involved, regulates it, and then collects the money from it. That's how it all works. It's a perfect scheme to fund themselves for what they're doing. Right?
I'll give you a gimme today. Actually, tobacco is a wonderful anti-parasitic, and it's also a great thing if you make a pure tobacco tea and you spray it on your garden, you'll kill the aphids and all kinds of things.
Oh yeah, there are tons and tons of uses for it. And I'll say the same thing with marijuana too, right? Both of those come from the ground. They are natural. They were created within the 6 days of creation, right? That's listed. They were right there with the other plants. I'm not going to back off from that. God said every herb-bearing seed is good for meat, right? It has a use in the body. So what that use is, I don't know. I'm not that smart, but I'm saying it's there. It was put there. It's good for us as long as we use it for its intended purpose. But the government has no right to get involved. That's the point. That's your liberty essential. Today, the government is trying to regulate creation, all right? It's got to stop.
All things come down to what are we, I think that I had somebody on and we were talking with Dan Cummins last week, and we were talking about positive rights and negative rights. Positive rights are what are we willing to pay to have those rights, or what's the benefit? Negative rights is leave me alone. And that's really what are we fighting about? To be able to be left alone, to live our lives the way that we need to. And as long as it doesn't infringe on somebody else's rights, then what's the problem?
Oh, one of those hardships around here is noise ordinance. Because if somebody else is running their lawnmower and it's too early for you, or if they're having a party in the evening and it's too late for you, or if they want to shoot their gun at a certain time of day, and even if they're doing it safely, it makes you anxious. Or if they have a rooster, oh, that would be one for me. Oh, I get it because of I have misophonia issues. I'm sensitive to noises. I don't like noisy noises. I don't like persistent random noises. All that stuff bothers me. That's a conflict on my right. But I also can't cause a problem with my neighbor by conflicting with their right to produce the noise. And that becomes where you have to work with your neighbor and be willing to have a relationship so that you don't conflict with each other's rights and trample all over them. But that's hard to do when you don't know your neighbors, or you don't want to know your neighbors, or you had a conflict before and you can't be eye to eye on anything. That kind of stuff happens around here. People in a semi-rural or a rural area are really kind of protective of their privacy. They don't really want to know anybody. They just want to do their own thing. And it's not until somebody causes a problem that they decide to get to know each other, typically. And that's backwards. So when our township was trying to do a noise ordinance thing, one of my solutions was maybe we have a group of people that assists with conflict resolution, because not everybody is good at that. And there are some people who are afraid of going to their neighbor for good reason. If your neighbor's been gruff before, or if your problem is he's shooting a gun at a certain time or in a certain manner that frightens you, you're not going to want to go knocking on his door. And so one of my thoughts was, well, if little old lady doesn't want to knock on her neighbor's door because she knows he has a gun, can you have a go-between besides the township supervisor or the board or the local sheriff's deputy? Can we just work together as a community to resolve problems rather than trampling on our rights or calling in the government or their form of military in order to continue to trample on rights? Because that's basically what they do. We don't need any new quote unquote laws or ordinances in order to prevent or punish these conflicts. What we need is people that are just going to be reasonable with each other.
Well, and that goes back to the fact that most people have such lousy communication skills that, you know,
Yeah.
they don't have the guts to hold other people accountable for what they do. So they go into just complaining to everybody else instead of just handling it. Right. That's an adult function. And we've lost that function. And the other thing is the communication skills to actually, you know, when you do know somebody, to your point, when you take the time to know somebody, you kind of earn the right to talk to them. I mean, we've had a couple of neighbors here that one of the neighbors went away at one point in time, and stepson came over and had a bunch of friends over, and they were absolutely obnoxious until about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I finally, I'm like, the kids, you know, I'm pretty tolerant, really. And finally I said something to him. I'm like, yeah, I said, I'd really appreciate you picking up your Fireball bottles that are all over my yard right now. And the parents were mortified. And I'm like, well, then they took a responsibility for it. And they said, we are so sorry. Sent the kid over to apologize, in fact, which is the right thing to do. I mean, a lot of times it's unintentional. You know, you can't automatically assume that it's a personal attack and get offended. That's the wrong step to step off of in any conflict. Assume that they just don't know first. And you know, you go to the talking to them and assuming, well, they probably don't know, you know, I mean, they may not even, most people don't even know, you know, what they're doing. They're not aware enough of the fact, you know, you get in the fun of the moment, and you might forget that there are other people around and such. And so, you know, just talking is a real important thing. You know, everybody out there, bring cookies to your neighbors or something like that. Reach out to them and say hi. You know, just want to let you know I'm here and thought I'd share cookies. You know, something like that. You know.
Our community, when we have somebody new move in, we still will gather in committee, just in my local area here. But we still gather in committee, and we'll build cookie plates or different snacks and tray plates, and go introduce ourselves to them. Right?
That's really cool.
Just to make them know that, hey, we're here, and if you need us, you know, this is how to get a hold of us. Every Christmas, we still do caroling. Right? A lot of people think that's so embarrassing, and I'm saying, you know, I go out with my kids and their grandparents, and we carol several houses within, you know, just a short span across from us. That is just basic neighborhood skills, and everything that you were just talking about, Karen. Conflict resolution, right? I try to keep the government out of that at all. You know, if we're going to talk about self-governing, everything you just talked about is Matthew 18, right? How to deal with conflict between one another. And I also get your point, because you can't send a little old lady, an old widow perhaps. Now, there are some that will, right? But for the most part, little old ladies, it's our job to protect them, to care for them. So there are times when we have to go and we have to be that mediator between, like, for instance, a widow or a fatherless child, an orphan, right? Those are times we have to stand up and protect the innocent. But for the most part, if you're a man and you have a problem and you go to your township board before you go to your neighbor, let me clarify, you're not a man.
Not a man.
Okay? Ladies, if you don't have a man, then you need to find, maybe you got a brother. Maybe you got a brother that could step in for you. Maybe you could do it yourself, right? That's impressive to me. I would never ask my wife to go handle a situation like that. But a child, if you don't have a father, maybe you have a father figure, an uncle, a neighbor that comes over and plays once in a while. You know, anything like that. There has got to be a protector for everybody within a community, right?
Yes.
If there isn't one, find one. If you see somebody without one, be one. But for Pete's sake, if you're just going to go immediately to your government, to your perceived authority to try to resolve a problem between you and a fellow person, you're not a person. You are a slave.
It's pathetic.
And that in this case is exactly what happened. There was one person who was offending other people based on noise. And women which is correct. These women, I don't know their marital status, whether they had men in their lives. I don't know, but I know it was all started by women. Went to the township, and we have a conflict. And when this all came up, he came forward and said, look, I've been here and there and there, and I've talked to all these neighbors, and I took these steps to try to mitigate the problem. So he did whatever he could do, but they're still not satisfied. What they wanted was a new or a changed ordinance. Instead of, you're using the township, and that means you're using everybody's tax dollars because you were too weak or manipulative or whatever your intentions were in order to change the rules for everybody. We already had a noise ordinance in position for 40 years, and nobody seemed to recognize that because it was never used. So they altered it, and it took months, and it took an attorney that they had to pay in order to do this. And it created a big hubbub instead of just going to one neighbor, solving the problem, and leaving it out of the government, like you said.
Using your adult skills to talk to each other instead of having to make everything into a big, and you know what, whenever you call an agency or something on someone, I don't care who you are, you will never resolve that conflict because that's a direct attack against someone. You have used the weaponized agencies, the captured asset agencies in order to do harm to someone you know. And I mean, that would have to be the absolute last result. But it's cowardice to jump right on that because you gotta know that they have weaponized every one of these unconstitutional agencies. And if you jump into something like that, and that's, before exercising every single other option you have, you're part of the problem. You are the problem. That's what they did in Nazi Germany. They called everyone, they called the government on their neighbors to rat them out. Yep. And the government counted on them to be offended and to do that, in fact. So it's something we need to rethink.
GOP.
What's that?
GOP, she says.
GOP, yeah. Let's call them. Somebody said one time I'm going to call Tudor Dixon on you. I said, I could give a rat's around about Tudor Dixon.
Please do. Give her my personal phone number.
Yeah, give her my phone number and I'll chew her tail for you because I really don't like people that are working with the Michigan oligarchs that are a puppet candidate that they backed out of. And you could see exactly this. And these idiots, these village idiots are still calling her into things. It's incredible. It's like, okay, I guess we need to have an anchor woman, a spokesperson who doesn't really have any experience. Couldn't even get the debate right, but I digress. So anyhow,
I was specifically referring to the reporting system that the GOP had started.
The neighborhood reporting.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
Yeah.
Let's turn everybody into spies so that you put in what's the dog, when did they go to work, and watch out for that census that's coming out too, because I have somebody that told me about what they got for the census. They want to know when you go to work, what your personal habits are on a daily basis. I suggest everyone. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to respond, and it's not going to be pretty words.
That's another thing we could probably tag a show on is the actual census, because people need to understand that is the purpose is only for determining representative status at the federal level, right? That means they need to know who you are, where you are, and how many of you there are. That is it, and that's all I ever fill out. I leave everything else blank. All 3 pages that they keep sending me is left blank. Right?
It's absurd. So it's usurpation. You don't need to do this. You shouldn't do it because it's when we protest things or refuse to go along to get along, it's an act of heroism. So I want to bring up our the next meeting, and my next guest is ready to come on right now, and that would be Bruce Castor. He's an attorney who's filed a lawsuit in the state of Pennsylvania, as well as was on. He's got quite an impressive list. I looked him up and I was reading all of the cases that he's been on and what he's done. This is a person of note to listen to, in my opinion. He's got quite a history here. But we want to talk about the U.S. Taxpayers Party, which is the Constitution Party in the state of Michigan. We have our nominating convention on July 27th at Lost Arrow Resort in Gladwin, Michigan. You can go to my Telegram page or the USTPM page on at USTPM on Telegram. I'm trying to be better at posting things there, but I'm like doing my best here. And so at any rate, go to the links there, sign up for the convention. We'll be more than welcome. We have a great time. It's all statesmen. And I'm going to tell you what, we have many defenders there, like Bill Mohr and Donna Brandenburg, who will actually, shut you down if you come as a disruptor and you don't want to work for restoring this nation. We don't have time for that nonsense. And so this is all people that actually want to restore the United States and are willing to do what it takes to do that. You guys got any last words? And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to move on.
A lot of people would say some of the stuff we've said, even just on this show, is weird, right? It's out of concept in their mind. Well, I got to tell you, this is normal, right? This is the stuff that I talk about on a daily basis, and the same principles, the same foundations that I hold to on a daily basis. And a lot of people, they don't understand that. But what's abnormal to me is when people talk about the things that are going on like it's just a standard way of life. Like they've been indoctrinated to believe that the corruption is normal. And I stand back and say, it's not. I don't know what reality you're living in. If you want to find out what normal should be around those people that hold to the foundation, that hold to the Judeo-Christian principles that we're founded on, that hold to the scriptures in that manner, and that hold to our Constitution as the law. Then you will find normal. If you have to adjust your thinking, adjust it. But anything outside of that is abnormal to me. It is subpar so far that you're not even playing the golf game anymore, right? I'm horrible at golf. I can't get close to par, but everything else is so far out, I don't even know what game you're playing.
All right.
Come here, figure out who we are, and you'll get a chance to speak to us one-on-one. Find out if we're real or not.
Yeah, you'll find out because they listen to us every week, so I'm pretty sure they know we're for real. So thanks, guys, for being on, and have a great day, and we'll see you next week, Wednesday on Liberty Essentials with Bill, Karen, Ralph, and myself. We'll talk to you later, guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Good morning. Welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it is the 26th day of June 2024. And I want to welcome my next guest on, the Honorable Bruce Castor. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me on the program.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I'm very excited to talk to you. It sounds like you've got a lot of stuff going on. And I'd like you to introduce yourself to everyone because you have quite a resume. And the cases that you have represented and stuff are very high profile and very, very impressive.
Well, that's nice of you to say. I've been a lawyer in the Philadelphia area almost 40 years. I started in the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office as an intern in 1981, and I was in and around prosecutors' offices until I was elected district attorney in 99 and then reelected in 03, and then I was elected commissioner, which is like the mayor and city council in a county in Pennsylvania, for two terms. So that would have been 7 and 11. So I served 16 years in elective office and 32 years with the county government. And after that, I I began doing civil trial work, and I represented President Trump in the second impeachment trial. I led his defense in that case. I did a number of the cases when COVID first came out to try to protect personal liberties, and had some very good successes in that. I was the prosecutor whose opinion ultimately was ruled to be the correct one in the Bill Cosby case. People remember that. Supreme Court of Pennsylvania unanimously reversed his conviction. So I've had a lot of exciting things to do, and this particular case certainly is up there with any of the ones I did. I did homicide for over 30 years, so I had quite an exciting time. People can watch me on these true crime shows all the time, and they call me up and they say, "Boy, you got old in a hurry," like, because they used cases from 30 years ago. But so I really enjoyed doing that, and that is simply parlayed into doing civil trial work, general civil trial work. Once you learn how to stand up in court and talk, I guess you can sort of do that with any topic. And I've been very interested to see the erosion of civil liberties. You know, when you spend your life as a prosecutor in an ethical prosecutor's office, not like we're seeing at the national level now. And by the way, Montgomery County, where I was the district attorney, it was sort of ground zero to prosecutors extending their power, because that's where Bill Cosby, all the shenanigans involving his arrest and conviction occurred. And since nothing happened to that prosecutor, even though the Supreme Court essentially wrote a roadmap of his unethical behavior, since nothing happened to him, prosecutors around the country, Letitia James and the fella in New York and the woman in Atlanta, they look around, see nothing happened to him. Well, nothing can happen to us. So now prosecutors are starting to pay attention to their constituencies and their media and their voters, and that's taking second place to their oaths of office as prosecutors who are there to be ministers of justice, not simply seek convictions and their own aggrandizement. So I've paid a lot closer attention in recent years to the abrogation of people's civil liberties, and I can certainly see everything that President Trump is saying is in fact the case, where he says that if it can happen to him, it can happen to anyone. When prosecutors are elected, all they have to do is keep happy the people that put them into office. And if no ethical agency or regulatory bar agency does anything to them, they have no incentive to follow their oaths to do what's right. Their only incentive is to please the media and their voters. And that's what I think you're seeing in New York and in a number of these prosecutions involving President Trump.
Well, to your point of the self-aggrandizement, it's also self-enrichment when they take that path, in my opinion, because they're putting their career above doing the correct thing, because they want this thing to continue on. And I have the opinion that people need to have an income stream outside of a government position that they can go back to. You know, you're supposed to serve in office, and in my opinion, and not make it a lifelong entrenched position. But that's me. So, well, tell me what's going on. You have a new lawsuit that you filed in Pennsylvania that I'm really, really very interested to hear about, and I know most of my viewers are too.
Yes, we filed an action in federal court here in Pennsylvania at the behest of United Sovereign Americans, which is a voter rights group. I think they're headquartered in Missouri. And during the period post 2020 election, I watched in fascination the way the question was spun about the election and whether the election was stolen. And people who remember the way we handled the impeachment is I didn't raise that issue in the impeachment. And there was a lot of internal debate about that. But the media had created this aura around anyone who said that the election was stolen was a nutcase, and not to be paid attention to, was to be put up to ridicule. In fact, on the first day of the impeachment, I still have the clip from the news with a picture of me and a quotation blown up in the clip where I said that the only reason we're here is that a majority of the House of Representatives, meaning the Democratic House of Representatives, don't want to face President Trump in an election in 2024. And I was ridiculed for that. Well, that's exactly what has happened, and they've done everything they could to avoid that. So the way the media had crafted this was that if it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the election in any state, or you don't have evidence that it would have changed the outcome of the election in any state, then there's no sense in paying any attention to these irregularities. And I kept saying there's something wrong with that. That doesn't sound right to me. I mean, at what point is an election not reliable because it has sufficient number of errors that you can't trust it? And I likened it to you go and you buy a fancy Swiss wristwatch, a mechanical watch. If it runs a couple of seconds fast or slow a day, you think you have an engineering marvel, and you're delighted by that. But if it runs 5 minutes fast or slow a day, now you send it back because you're not confident that when you look at your watch, you're getting told the right time. It might be a beautiful piece of engineering, but it's not reliable. So this was constantly bothering me, and so about 2 months ago or so, people from the United Sovereign Americans called me and said, "Could you take a look at this issue that we have, this idea that we have?" And I represent other conservative groups at the national level. The United Methodist Church, for example, that's going through the period where its members don't want to be woke, but the national organization wants to be woke. So I'm helping the individual members deal with that issue. So I'm not, it's not unusual for me to get calls saying, "Hey, could you take a look at this?" So I got the paperwork they sent me, and I'm reading it, and they were citing the exact same thing that had been bothering me that I hadn't been able to put my finger on, which is this idea that how many errors are allowed in an election before you can be you lose confidence that the election is producing the right result. And the way the media had framed it is, as long as there's no evidence that the result would have changed the outcome, stop worrying about it. And that doesn't sound right to me. That sounds like a recipe for either fraud or fraudulent or negligent elections. So this group, United Sovereign Americans, they got the data from the Pennsylvania Department of State, and one of the things that jumps right out at you is that there were 91 plus 100, so 9,100 plus more votes counted than were cast. So right there, that at least 9,100 mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So I looked into it, and you would think that Congress would have set some sort of a test for this, and it turns out that they did. Congress, in the Help America Vote Act in 2002, and as interpreted by the FEC and its regulations, has said that an election is considered to be valid or certifiable or reliable if there are fewer than one error out of 125,000 ballots cast. So 1 out of 125,000. So it's relatively easy. You take all the ballots that were cast in Pennsylvania, there was 5 million and some. You divide that by 125,000, and you get the number of errors you're allowed to have in an election. And in 2002, that number is 44. So right off the bat, you have 9,100 plus that are wrong. So you already know that the election is not valid, is not reliable. So I'm not saying that, the guys who represent Pennsylvania in Congress don't belong there and didn't get more votes than the person they ran against. What I'm saying is they don't know that they did. And the person who lost does not know that they got fewer votes. And in fact, 35% of the 17 or 18 congressmen that represent Pennsylvania, they won their district by the margin of percentage that is within the number of votes that were vote errors that were found, meaning that in those districts you absolutely can't be sure that the results produced the right winner. Now, we're not accusing anybody of anything. We're not trying to get the election overturned. What we're saying is that here are these areas where we saw a problem in 2002. At the very least, the overvote is indisputable. And then some of the other ones, whether the systems are working properly or whether the registrations are reliable, are perhaps less easy to identify, but still are filled with problems. And since nobody has done anything to fix that, why would we think that in 2024 we would have an election any more reliable than we had in 2022? And in 2024 we have the president on the ballot.
The whole anybody who's looked into this, even in a minor way, can pretty much come to the conclusion that the whole system is broken, and that the entirety, I mean, and I'm talking not as an attorney, but as a citizen, the entire system is broken. There are so many errors that were made in the last two elections. It's unbelievable. 2022 and 2020. I personally don't believe that we can go forward with another election until we address those things. You would never ram a procedure through a company, financial or anything, when you saw the amount of errors that were in this. And what are you asking for with the lawsuit? Then what kind of remedy are you asking for? Have you gotten to that yet?
Yes, I mean, very basically, obviously, we want the issues fixed. I mean, we want an investigation on again, using the overvotes as the most easy one to understand. Why did that happen? Now, there can only be one explanation, and that there was some problem with the tabulators, that they counted more votes than they had actual pieces of paper to take the votes from. Whether it's a machine or the person running the machine, we don't know. But the various statutes, and they're both federal and state statutes in Pennsylvania, they have enforcement mechanisms that the Attorney General of the United States, the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, are supposed to make sure these things happen. So what I would really like is that those entities, those prosecuting entities, to make sure that the federal elections run by the Department of State in Pennsylvania comply with the dictates of Congress and the FEC. And I fully expect one of the first things I'm going to hear is we don't have time to do that. The job is too big and we can't get it done in time because early voting ballots will go out, in weeks before the election. So we're only weeks away from when the election actually starts. Something like that I think is crazy that we do that, but that's the way the law is. And so in the short term, we're going to have to devise some mechanism for every time we see a person voting where there might be a problem, that person casts a provisional ballot that we can then use later and in the time allotted to us between when the election occurs and when it must be certified, that personnel be hired to review and check those things, with the idea of by the time you get to 2026, which would be the next federal election, there would have been people in place that would have solved the problem. So what I had been telling people who asked me is, if the federal judge looks down at me and says, okay, Bruce, I agree with you that there's a problem. What do you want me to do about it? I'm going to come up with a short-term solution, like I said, but the longer-term solution is special masters appointed in each county to make sure that county complies with the statutes as written, and a special master that makes sure that the Department of State complies with those dictates, and that those masters have to periodically report back to the judge on progress, and the judge set deadlines by which certain things need to be accomplished. And if they're not accomplished, and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania can't show a good reason why they didn't meet those benchmarks, that some fine or some sanction be imposed on Pennsylvania for failing to meet those obligations if the judge doesn't think it was a good enough reason. I mean, I don't believe that the answer of it's too hard ought to be good enough. I mean, in every endeavor that I've ever been in court, if the law requires something and the judge orders it to happen, the judge doesn't want to hear, well, it's too hard to do. The judge might say, how long will it take you to do it? Or how many additional people will it take for you to do it? Or, over what area do you want to start with first and then grow from there? But what the judge is not going to say is just because it's too hard, you don't have to do it. One of the things that we did in this suit was we broke down by county the number of errors. And, 6 or 8 counties account for a huge percentage of the whole statewide total errors. And as you might imagine, those are the counties that are run by one party. So if the judge asked me what order should we do it in, I say I'd start with the counties that do the most, that have the most errors, and work toward the one that has the least errors, on the theory that they're the ones that have the most errors are the ones that are affecting the overall state vote tally the most.
That's a good idea to have oversight there. One of the concerns that I have, and I love this effort, anybody that's fighting this, I think it's an amazing thing. Is there any merit to looking at the 2020, 2022 elections and with all of and I'm going to say it, with all the cheating, the rigging, the ballot harvesting, the stuff, because I know what we have going on in Michigan. I'm struggling with the fact that the people that passed this in the past were not held accountable for the violations of their oath of office, and that those policies or those elections were rammed through and they should never have been certified. I'm struggling with this because a crime was committed, and President Donald J. Trump is the rightful president of the United States. There's no way that you can look at the numbers and see the ups and downs in the charts. Just common sense tells you that this wasn't a small problem. This is a large problem. And is there, I don't know, I don't want to jump away from what you're doing here, but is this going to be enough to fix it in 2024 for this to not happen again? Or is it I don't know how to say this. Do you know what I mean? How we need to have tougher penalties when people break the law. If they broke the law and they passed an election that had that big of a disparity in having an election that was passed, how do we hold these people accountable? Because they just signed it, and I don't think they care about fines.
Well, I think it's been going on. It's been slowly building to this point for a long time. And in the 2020 election, it exploded because of the provisions that were put in place on account of COVID as an excuse in order to create this gigantic mess. So I agree with you that you shouldn't certify an election if it does not comport with the error rate that Congress and the FEC required. And I think the fair thing to do, and it may not sit well with people who really want to see those punished that violate the law. But I think the fair thing to do is say, look, we are not going to tolerate this anymore. It's been tolerated for too long. We're not going to tolerate it anymore. That's why I'm asking the federal judge to do it and not a state judge, because the U.S. Constitution, while a lot of people know that the U.S. Constitution in Article 1 says that the states will supervise federal elections, there's a second clause after that which says, however, Congress may overrule any regulation of a state. So in other words, really Congress is in charge of federal elections, even though states have the presumptive responsibility. Congress has the authority to overrule any state regulations. So when Congress says 1 in 125,000 errors is allowed, that has not been enforced, at least in Pennsylvania. It doesn't appear to have been enforced. And we should say from now on, we're going to do that, and don't certify the election until you can come back to the court and say that we've met that standard. Because I think going back in time, and believe me, I totally understand the frustration that people have, especially when you've seen the way the country has been governed in the last, 3 years, but 3+ years. And we're very fortunate that we have an opportunity to compare the success rate that Donald Trump had to the disaster that we have now, the administration that we have now. You don't often get that opportunity. So I think the voters will do the right thing and will say, setting aside everything the media does and all the things that they claim that's bad about President Trump, I was better off 5 years ago than I am today. And I do think the voters will snap back, but I am afraid that elections have been allowed to slide for so long and to get so far off kilter that we need to have some effort by the federal court to ensure that the will of Congress is complied with. And I wrote this, Donna, so that it could be used in other states, because the United Southern Americans said, can you write it in such a way that we could have lawyers in other states present the same types of arguments? And just yesterday, I had a conversation with them about how are we going to supervise this around the rest of the country. So I'm going to be figuring out ways to get other lawyers this information and get them thinking about how to present this in other states and make it sort of into a national movement.
Well, put me on speed dial for Michigan, because I'm kind of sick of everything. I'm one of these people that has been very outspoken about this, and you don't know me very well, but I it's like the traitor in chief in the White House right now. I'm sick of that guy, and he's committed so many acts of treason, it's not even funny. And the elections, the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, was deprived his office through, and I'll say it, go ahead, somebody sue me, through stolen elections. And I am absolutely horrified what happened to him. I am an unapologetic President Trump supporter. I thought he did I'm a business owner. So to see somebody that came in and had peace all over the globe, we weren't fighting with anybody. The traitor in chief, Biden, gets in office and he bombs Syria in the first day. And we've had nothing but conflict since then. Runaway inflation. He doesn't know how to manage anything. And the whole of the United States can see what a bad situation we're in when we have failed elections and somebody with no integrity who doesn't care about the United States and puts everybody else in front of it, where President Trump put we the people in front of all of this nonsense. And we're grateful. Those of us who support President Trump are so grateful for him, his policies. He set us up for tax reform with the tariffs that he did. He understood how to run the country in the way that it was supposed to. And I miss his mean tweets. I thought, everybody's like, oh, I don't want to see his mean tweets. I'm like, bring back the mean tweets, for gosh sake. I was living for those things because he's funny. And he says what all the rest of us are thinking. And it was refreshing to have someone, I think he's the greatest president in the history of the United States. And to have somebody that actually said what needed to be said, wasn't afraid to make those hard decisions, didn't back down, and truly had the United States moving in the correct direction to restore this as the republic. And I'll be forever thankful for him, for you, for standing with him in the second impeachment trial there and representing him. Everyone who has stood with him, because he is the representative of what this deep state the global crime syndicate is willing to do to him as a seated president on January 6th, taking in political prisoners. I mean, the gloves came off with President Trump and what the deep state was willing to do to us. It's incredible. And I'm really thankful for the effort. And I think we need to hit this beast from every single direction that we can, because we're going to find we're going to find a chink in the armor that they think they've set up in order to take down this criminal activity. And I'm thankful for that. And let's get it going in Michigan. How would you put these masters, or the election masters in the counties? Who would choose them? What department would it be under? What's the accountability line there? Because God only knows our judges are all corrupt. They're all funded by Soros. I mean, we've got so many dirty judges in the state of Michigan. I don't even know where to go for a good one.
Well, I'm a practicing lawyer, so I'm not going to tell you that I think all the judges are corrupt. But we filed in federal court in Harrisburg, and I expect that the court there will recognize the importance of the case and will put one of the more experienced judges on it. But the way the system is supposed to work, and when I walk into court, and especially when I'm taking younger lawyers with me, and they're worrying about the judge's background, and the judge used to be a plaintiff's lawyer, or used to be a criminal defense lawyer, or whatever, I say, listen, just assume the judge is going to do their job correctly, and we do our job correctly. That's the way the system is supposed to work. Sometimes one of the lawyers or the judge doesn't do their job correctly, but in my experience, they actually do on a large scale. Now, what we have seen on television lately has not been very encouraging, and I did defend a number of 1-6 cases, and I wasn't encouraged with what I saw when I was in D.C. But I have no reason to think that the federal judges in Pennsylvania, and especially the ones that we filed in Harrisburg, are going to call it any way other than the way they see it. And the special masters are appointed by the court. They're paid for by the court, and there'd probably be some assessment for the because it's the Department of State that's under the microscope. But and then the masters, they work for the court and have to report to that judge. I mean, people who are old enough remember when busing was a thing, and there were court-ordered busing, and these judges would take these cases for years and would supervise the implementation of whatever the right thing to do was, and would supervise it for years. And when that judge retired, another judge had to be brought up to speed. So sometimes these things take a long time. But I'm not going to worry about we get some judge that's corrupt, because I just don't think that will happen in this case. I mean, I know I saw the same thing everybody saw in New York. I saw the same thing everybody saw in both New York cases. I saw the judge in Atlanta who was somewhat better, and the judge in Florida is somewhat better. I saw judges in D.C. that couldn't have been more polite and couldn't have been more collegial with me, but just were totally enveloped within the Beltway way of thinking. And earlier, Donna, in your comments, you said that we were going to find a chink in their armor, and I think we have found the chink in the armor. If you're talking to people who are outside the Beltway and outside of these heavily blue areas, like, for example, I'm in Montgomery County, which is controlled by the Democrats, and when I was in the government, it was when it changed over. So a lot of the government officials in our county are Democrats that I knew from my time in the government, and all of them agree that at the national level, the left completely bungled their response to Donald Trump and 1-6. Had they left him alone and not gone through all of that nonsense with the impeachment and all these prosecutions, there's no way that he would have been able to put together the juggernaut so soon as he was able to, and completely blow any competition away. 6 months, 8 months before the election, or more, when you had this sort of inevitable feeling, because the left, they they treated him so obviously unfairly that, except for the people on the hard left who are cheering them on, everybody else is scratching their head saying, how do you treat anybody this way? This is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And the hard left managed to do something that I thought was impossible. They managed to make Donald Trump a sympathetic figure. And and that's the chink in their armor. They are so smug and so self-satisfied and so full of their own self-importance that they fail to recognize the way the world actually looks at things. And when I talk to my political friends in Southeast Pennsylvania who are on the other side, they don't argue back with me. They say, we know. But at the national level, the hard left, they just can't get out of their own way. And I mean, everyone knew that impeachment was nonsense. I mean, the Chief Justice of the United States is supposed to try impeachments of the president. When Chief Justice Roberts didn't show up that first day, that should have told you everything you needed to know, that there was no jurisdiction to have an impeachment trial. And, you know, we had a vote in the Senate on that very issue, and we lost, and the trial went ahead. Now, that to me means that I don't know how many voted against us in that, but you know, clearly more than 50 did, and every one of those senators, I think, violated their oaths of office because they didn't uphold the Constitution, which clearly says that federal officers, the only penalty for impeachment is removal from office, which means if they're already removed from office, you can't have an impeachment trial. And when Chief Justice Roberts wasn't there, I said, doesn't that tell you everything we need to know? And no, they just bullied ahead with it, because the real point was not to punish President Trump by removing him from office. It was to try to get to that second clause, which would disqualify him from running for office in the future. But you can't get to that second clause until you had voted and succeeded in removing him from office. So you never were going to get there. There's never a chance of getting there. But
I think they're scared to death of him. They're scared to death of President Trump getting in, because he's got the American people behind him, and pretty extra sure that he's going to come in like a wrecking ball to every single person that's violated the law, not to get back at them for what they've done to him, but for spitting on this nation, for all kinds of criminal activities. And I really believe that he does love America very much, and will stand for this nation and right all these things that are wrong. I mean, he's an amazingly brilliant man, and I don't think he's going to put up with the crime syndicate that's been running amok within our agencies, within the I personally believe that every single one of them in the state of Michigan committed treason when they jumped on with Whitmer with these unconstitutional mandates, as well as some of the other COVID lockdowns and such, because nobody said anything. And the Republicans were as bad as the Democrats here, because I was involved, and they did not step forward and defend the president. They didn't defend the election. They didn't do anything. They just sat there and said, oh, we're just going to move on. It's like, how can you just walk away from this? They were the ones that were supposed to step forward and say something, and they just didn't.
Well, I mean,
heartbreaking.
President Trump would have every right and responsibility to try to correct those things that he saw were wrong. I mean, it isn't retaliation. It's
right.
He's job. He has his job. Right. He's exactly right. It's his job. And earlier on, you commented about his tweeting. I was among those people. Remember, I'm not some big Trump guy. I didn't know him. When I changed law firms, there was press associated with that, and somebody at the White House saw that, and that's how I ended up with the impeachment job. But so I'm not some longtime friend of his, and I like everyone else, I was watching. I mean, I wasn't going to vote for Hillary Clinton, but I was watching the tweeting and all that, and I was wondering, is this really the smartest idea? And I eventually figured out that was his way of removing the filter of the media between himself and the people, because the media would take what he said out of context or wouldn't report it at all. I mean, that note I just told you about Chief Justice Roberts not showing up at the impeachment, I bet you I'm the first person to tell you that in all these years.
I've never heard that. And so that's like a very, well, and like you said, the fake news that's out there, nobody's telling the truth on anything, and they're spinning it in a million different directions. And so, I mean, I think this is really important to talk about these things and get the truth out there. I never heard that. Had
So
no
that's
idea.
why the using the tweets to get to directly to the people was his mechanism of removing that filter, because that thing about Chief Justice Roberts that I just told you, everybody watching your show right now is going, hey, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. I never thought of that. Well, the reason you never thought of that is you're not a constitutional scholar, nor do I expect you to be, but nobody in the press told you that.
Yeah, it was hidden from us. I mean, how would we, it's like, and I try to stay up on the issues pretty well and what's going on. I never heard that.
And when I was arguing on the first day, and I said, let's put our cards on the table here. The only reason we're here is the Democrats are afraid of President Trump running in 2024, and the entire national media, to a man, ridiculed me about that. I saved a printout from the a photograph of me with that quote that was shown on TV. To remind me of how totally ridiculous these people could be, because there isn't a person alive now who disagrees with that statement. It was back then they thought that his career was over, and that that we're just putting the extra nail in his coffin. And in fact, it was just beginning to be resurrected, his career. And because the left bungled it so badly, he's back. And not only is he back, there's an entire electorate that can compare the way things were from 2017 to 2021 and the way things were from 2021 until now, and say, holy smokes, this is a huge difference. And I mean, the thing with the immigration, I mean, how that's not an invasion, I don't understand that. I'm no smarter than anyone else, but I read the Constitution, and the federal government's job is to protect the nation's borders from invasion from foreign invaders. Why aren't we doing that? And it's mind blowing. So when United Sovereign Americans came to me and had this idea, and it meshed exactly with my own thinking of how can we be sure that the guy we elected to Congress or the lady we elected to Congress truly had more votes than the other one? And in Pennsylvania, we don't know that, and I think we should.
Yeah, I think we need that accountability, and that's well said on the border. I think that's something for everybody to remember, is that we didn't have these problems, and they were dealt with in a very sophisticated way. Actually, there was always a win-win situation that President Trump was able to achieve and kept the peace. That's the biggest thing, because we're never going to agree with each other on issues 100%. But you can craft things in a way that's acceptable to people. And he did a great job of that. He was a great peacemaker, and he reached out to people that had been traditionally sold to us as our enemies. And he reached out. He was the one that stepped across to them and said, we got to talk. He didn't just slap him in the face and designate him as the designated boogeyman. He actually talked to people and actually cared about people at the human level. I just love him. I think he's great. And I have much respect for him and everyone standing with him. And I really wish him great success in not only any of the current proceedings that they keep lobbing, they keep lobbing stuff at him too. It's like they're just not seeming to run out of ammunition, because they are so scared of him getting in office and, to your point, doing his job.
Well, I think now my sense, I live in suburban Philadelphia, so the fifth largest media market. So there's a large number of people who live in Southeast Pennsylvania that I interact with. And my sense is that that this is a watershed type of election, and the public has already decided that that the continued attacks on President Trump are unfair, they're un-American. The weaponization of the prosecutor's office, both civilly and criminally, if it can be done to him, it can be done to anyone else. And I think those people have made up their minds that whatever is lobbed, as you said, at him will roll off of his back. And, whatever advice he's getting from us and from others is let it roll off your back, and he's doing it. And
just keep walking.
When I saw the gag orders in New York, and then now they're asking for it in Florida, as a lawyer, I know that a gag order is designed so that pretrial publicity doesn't interfere with jury selection and the jurors that hear the case, so that they're insulated from things that are not introduced in the courtroom. So when you're dealing with a case at the level that President Trump is dealing with, everybody already knows. So there's no point in having a gag order, because that the harm that it is designed to protect against is no longer present. When we represented the Trump organization in the first criminal trial in front of that same with that same prosecutor's office in that same courthouse, 10 of the 12 jurors told us in the jury selection process that they had a bias against President Trump, and no matter what the judge said, they could never set that aside. And 10 of the 12 of them got seated as jurors, because of the 200 people that came in, 180 of them had that same feeling. So you were guaranteed to get a biased jury. So when people ask me, what's going to happen in the most recent case in New York, I said, he'll get convicted. They said, what about the evidence? What about this? What about that? I said, it won't matter, because the jury pool is so biased, it won't make a difference. Now, the case will get reversed on appeal. It'll follow the same track as other cases where the prosecutors have done outrageous things to get convictions. And then as it moves up, it gets reversed when you get to the appellate courts. But it was designed, as everybody I think sees now, to dirty him up before the election. It has failed because all the people who were already not going to vote for him still aren't going to vote for him. And anybody who was on the fence see he was treated unfairly and are going to vote the other way, in my judgment. So I think the left has totally mishandled this. Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure to talk with you. And is there any way that people can get a hold of you, or do you have a website besides the representative, what is it, American Sovereign Citizens?
United Sovereign Americans.
Got it completely wrong. And I know these guys too. I'm sitting there going, it's one of those moments, And so if you go to that website, will they see your work there, and will they see the case there? Or what's the best way to find this information and to follow what's happening on this? Because I think you're going to get a lot of support on this, and certainly you will in Michigan. I mean, I will post this and put it out there and start drawing attention to this, because I think that what you guys are doing is just extraordinary. And I'm just so proud. I'm so proud to be alive right now to see this and see really, really good people that are willing to step forward because of their love of God, family, and country. It's just an extraordinary time to be alive.
I will send you the information so that you can post it on wherever you like in Michigan. If people want to go to our website, it's MTV, like music television, mtvlaw.com. My law partner and partner in the impeachment is Michael Vanderveen, and he's the managing partner of our firm. So it's mtvlaw.com.
Okay.
And you can find me on there and my address and whatnot.
Well, this is just wonderful. Is there anything that people out there can do to help you in this effort at all?
I think contacting the United Sovereign Americans, Marley Hornak is the person I've been dealing with, Marly Hornik, Hornik. And I mean, obviously, if we're trying to expand this to other states, we're going to need funding to hire lawyers and experts and move the case along. And I'm sure that they're anxious to hear from anybody who wants to contribute to the effort. United Sovereign Americans, I see it's on the screen here. They're really quite a good group. And when I'm talking with them, I hear responses from people who have really thought these things through. So I might have been just scratching the surface, but when I started talking with them, I'm getting the deep dive. And I think if people want to get the deep dive, they should be involved with this group.
I like the resolution that they wrote here. I wanted to click on this because this is something worth studying and looking at the basis of what they're all about. And they're a very reconciliatory group. I find them to be very well educated, well spoken, and very, very informed. And so you can look at the resolution here. Also, this was a New York resolution, but can also be, I believe, moved to other states. And I just think very highly of all of them. And but this is the New York resolution I put up on the screen here. And let me see if I can go back to. I'll go back to their home page here. So, and you can find their action plan, the resolution, progress. I mean, all of these wonderful things that you can find out about. And up above that, I'm going to go back to your website there, and I will post this on my Telegram channel, which is at Brandenburg, the number 4MI. Is there anything else that you want to communicate? This is wonderful talking to you, and I appreciate you taking my normal American frustrated questions, because I can honestly say there's so many of us out there that are so angry about what's happened to the United States and watching the destruction of things that we really, really love. And it's a little bit heartbreaking, and quite honestly, I think all of us are ready to see some action. So, I think that a lot of the questions come in from the fact that we are more educated than we were in the last two major elections. And people know what's going on. And I think if people decide to cheat in this next one or rig the election, we know where to look now. So now the biggest thing is everybody's got to vote. You've got to do your duty and get out there and vote, because I don't even think they're going to be able to cheat their way out of as many people that are going to vote for President Trump this time around. So we have to do our jobs there. So is there anything else that you'd like to say?
I think that prosecutors need to do their jobs, and two of the defendants in our case are the Attorney General of Pennsylvania and the Attorney General of the United States. If the laws are being violated, the prosecutors have to take off their politician hat and put on their Minister of Justice hat and enforce the law. It hasn't been that long since I was I was Attorney General only 8 years ago. So it's only been in the last 8 or 10 years that I've seen this incredible action by prosecutors to become activists instead of justice ministers. And I don't think anybody goes into the voting booth and votes for their DA or their attorney general because they want an activist. They go in the voting booth because they want to know that their community is safe from burglars and robbers and rapists and murderers. And at the state level, they want their things like their elections to be sacrosanct, and they want their public officials to not take bribes and things like that. I mean, that's what they want their prosecutors to do, not become activist politicians. And yet we have seen that. We saw it with Bill Cosby. We see it in Atlanta with Donald Trump. We see it in New York with Letitia James. I mean, we're seeing it in Chicago and in San Francisco and in Los Angeles. And we got to get away from that. And prosecutors need to do their jobs and not be politicians. And if that were the case, I think a lot of these problems would start to melt away.
Be great if we could all work ourselves out of that kind of a job, because the law removes those people that are refusing to be good people, and move them out of the way so they can't hurt any other people, and that we work ourselves out of the job. I mean, it's unrealistic, but it's my world. So anyway.
When I was a prosecutor, the presumption of innocence and the burden of proof and all of those things and the constitutional rights, we took those really seriously. And were we disappointed if there was if 5 pounds of cocaine we took off somebody got suppressed because the police failed to adhere to some rule? Yeah, we were disappointed, but we didn't try to find a way illegally to prosecute that guy. We found a way to teach the police to make sure they do it the right way so that it didn't happen again. And we've gotten away from that, where the prosecutors no longer feel it's necessary to do what's right. They feel it's necessary to do what the public wants them to do and the media wants them to do. And the media has turned the public to the left and prosecutors into activists.
Fair enough. Well, I always finish with a prayer. So do you mind if I pray right now?
Absolutely not.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this very, very wonderful day that you've given us. Another day here to live and to glorify you and do your work on this earth that you created for us. And we're so thankful for everything you've done. Thank you for Bill and Karen and Bruce and all the brave people that have stepped forward and speak up and say the things that maybe are unpopular but are true. We ask that you protect people's hearts when they're ridiculed and give them your strength, your words, and the path that you would have us go, your wisdom, discernment, so that we make good decisions, that we go in the direction that always honors you and is in service to humanity and to this earth. It's your sandbox. We honor you with the fact that you are God and we are not. And we want this nation to return to one nation under your jurisdiction, where we pay attention to your rules, the laws that allow us to live in peace with each other and defending each other's rights, which you've given us all. We're so thankful for everything. You've been a great friend to us, and we want to be a friend to you. God bless everyone out there. Please let them know that they're loved and they're important, and that you will never leave nor forsake them, that they are specially and uniquely created. You knew them before they were even formed in their mother's womb, and that you care for them, their hurts, their things they're disappointed with. And all we have to do is, I really, truly believe, give things over to you. This is your battle. And we gladly give this all to you and are willing to walk the path that you lay in front of us, no matter what it would be, unwavering, and with the courage and the bravery and the strength that comes from you as a gift from you to us. We thank you so much and we love you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. So you have a really great day. And so this is the part of the show, boys and girls, that we go to ding, 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 BrandenburgforGovernor.com, because I am the best non-conceder that ever non-conceded in the history of the United States. And I would like to have a discussion with President Trump on that, because I'm still going to say I hold the title until I talk to him about it. And with that said, remember that you're loved, and you don't have to feel bad when things go awry, because God's there. He knows what's going on, and he's going to hold people accountable. This is not going to go on forever. And he's chosen people specifically for this time to be here, to fight the fights that need to be fought. And guess what? Tag, you're it. If you're here, he chose you to be here now. Get involved. Make sure that you fight this fight and stand without wavering to the end. And if it's important to do things with integrity, with honor, and with valor. No matter what we do, you instead of putting our focus on the materialistic world, nothing is worth breaking the law, hurting other people, or committing acts against God himself. Because when you do the wrong thing, it's committing acts against God himself. So find ways to reach out to your neighbors. There's a lot of people that are hurting out there right now. Bring them cookies or something. Go talk to people. Bridge those gaps like President Trump did, and be an ambassador here on this world for everyone who wants to see things done right. And with that said, God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. It's a choice. And if you don't have a good example, be one. Go ahead and stay on the line, please, Bruce. I'm going to end this, and we'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, let's see, who do I have on? I've got a big day tomorrow, huge day tomorrow. So I'll post the schedule on my Telegram channel, and we've got Joshua James Lawrence, a governor candidate for New Mexico. We've got the new Brandenburg citizen journalist panel that will be on, and also Terry Newsom. And he's got an amazing story of standing in the face of incredible persecution. And you're going to love this guy. He's well spoken and he's got all sorts of evidence out there. So we'll see you tomorrow.